Japan is the third largest economy in the world. It's home to some of the largest car and electronics manufacturers. It has a very high saving ratio and modern infrastructures. What can go wrong? Well, for starter, a 200% debt to GDP ratio, an aging population, and strained supply lines. What does it mean for you watching in the US, Europe, or the part of Asia? Quite a lot actually. I've worked and lived in Japan for the past 24 years, and I'll try to give you a unique perspective of what you need to know, how it can affect you, and more importantly, how you can prepare if things go to worse. And I'll do that as soon as you click the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It would help us a lot. Thank you. Let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm Johan from Economia, your destination for financial independence, tips to invest and spend wisely. So Japan is the third largest economy in the world, just behind China and the US. As you can see on screen, it's quite bigger than number 4, Germany. Actually, Japan used to be number 2 and it got taken over by China in 2010. The July revised GDP is 2.4%. That's quite a nice growth, although it's down from April, that was 2.9%. There are 125 million inhabitants in Japan between the residents and the Japanese citizen. It's minus 0.8% year over year. And if we look at the GDP per capita, it's over $42,000 with a median income that's quite high, as you can see on screen. The saving rate is also quite high at 9.6% compared to the US at 5.8%. So that helps a lot its banks being some of the largest in the world. As you can see on the screen right now, it has 8 banks in the top 100 and 4 banks in the top 20. Toyota is the largest car maker in the world in terms of cars sold, with 9.5 million of them in 2021. If we look at LCD makers, Sharp is the world's number 6, Toshiba is number 8, and Kyocera number 9. Quite impressive, isn't it? Airlines, All Nippon Airways is regularly ranked as top airline in terms of service and quality. And, by the way, did you know that according to some estimate, the Japanese military is the 5th largest in the world, and its navy can hold its own against China's? You never think about it, but it's normal for an island nation with very large and very long supply lines. And a bit of trivia, the Japanese passport is considered the most powerful in the world according to the Henley Index, as you can see on screen. Not too shabby, right? It looks really good, isn't it? And nobody would like anything to happen to one of their biggest trading partner. The economy slumped in Q1 but recovered in Q2 with a growth of 3.25%, which is really good, but the inflation was at 2.6%. It seems small compared to the US or Europe, but actually it's the highest it's been in the last 7.5 years, and the Bank of Japan has an objective of 2%, so it's quite higher than that. Most of Japan's manufacturing is now done in China, like many other countries, and the supply chain is really strained for all the reasons that we know of. And of course, the price of energy is really high, especially for Japan that has almost no natural resources. So that's a big issue. Especially, we can add to that that most of the power plants in Japan are still closed 11 years after the Fukushima accident. Winter is going to be really tough, and if it wasn't enough, the Japanese yen is at slowest against the US dollars. That's been in a long time. It has lost 24% of this value since the beginning of the year. And why, you would ask? Well, the US Fed has been increasing its interest rate to combat inflation, whereas Japan has not moved from its minus 0.1% interest rate. That makes a big difference, and then the money flows to the US. So imports are getting more expensive, and imports are everything for Japan: energy and raw materials. So it might be a good idea if you are an exporter, the yen is less expensive, you are more competitive when you're exporting. And if you are bringing back revenues from the US or Europe, those revenues are going up just by the exchange rate. However, the cost of raw material is going up, and that is squeezing margin. If that wasn't enough, as I mentioned earlier, the debt to GDP ratio is 200%. Yes, that's not a typo. For every $1 of wealth creation done by Japan, Japan owes $3 of debt. It's very difficult to be sustainable. Actually, the budget of Japan was balanced up until 1987. That was good. But since then, it's been going down and down and down, and it's been completely unbalanced to the point that today, to balance the revenue, it's completely impossible for the budget, to balance the budget, as you say. It's completely impossible. Japan has to borrow up to 40% of its budget to cover its expense. Yes, the revenues that the Japanese government is getting from taxes just cover 60% of the annual budget. It's completely out of control. And most of the debt, the Japanese bonds, are actually owned, 50% of it, are owned by the Bank of Japan. And the interest rate is obviously very, very low. We are talking of 0.005%. Yes, that's one of the lowest in the world. And that's one of the reasons why the interest rate cannot be increased. With such a ballooning debt, if we were to increase the interest rate in Japan, then the government would basically shoot its own foot. So it's a very, very difficult situation right now. And Japanese workers have not seen their wages increasing anywhere as fast as inflation, and that's been for a long time. So they are getting really, really squeezed. And actually, domestic consumption is one of the drivers of the economy for Japan. On top of that, the Japanese population is diminishing. Yes, that's true. The fertility rate is only at 1.3 in Japan, whereas you need to be above 2.1 to just maintain your population. The population itself has been decreasing for the past 11 years, and according to some estimates, it's going to be reducing by 1 million people for the next decade. And we know that population growth is actually one of the factors for economic growth. So that's a big, big issue. And even if Japanese families were starting to have 3 babies from now on, every family, this would take 20 to 25 years until those babies would enter the workforce. So for the next 20 to 25 years, the already pressing issues of the lack of worker in the IT space, in the construction space, farming space, as well as medical space, is going to be bigger and bigger with a population that's getting older. The solution would be to open the doors to skilled workers and a lot of workers and to welcome immigration, but that's a taboo subject in Japan, and we don't see anything moving anytime soon. And I'm not talking about geopolitical tensions with North Korea or the Strait of Taiwan. The Strait of Taiwan sees the majority of the import and export that Japan is doing going through it. If there was a war or an invasion and the strait would be closed, that would choke the Japanese economy, and Japan will have no choice to intervene to reopen the lines, meaning we'll have to go to war or have to just fold and being choked and just surrender. That's a very, very tense situation. And actually, Japan has been rearming like crazy in the past 10 years. And recently, the government has said that they intend to double the military budget, the defense budget in the next 5 years, going from 0.996% of their GDP to 2% of their GDP. Are you scared yet? I haven't talked about natural disasters. Typhoons are coming regularly to Japan, but more importantly, and you probably know about it, there are a lot of earthquakes in Japan, and they can be quite devastating, as we've seen 11 years ago. And Tokyo, the center of the economy in Japan, or one of the biggest center of economy in Japan, and the seat of power, is due for a massive earthquake, a regular one that comes every century, and it hasn't happened yet. So how will it affect you, and what can you do about it? So before I continue, remember, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I'm just a guy on YouTube. So for any investment decision, please do your own research and talk to your financial advisor. So we talked about geopolitical issues. That's a difficult word to say. well, there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to see what's happening and pray for the best. Same for natural disasters, and believe me, I'm very concerned. But then again, just have to prepare everything you can do to do the best for your loved ones and people around you. But there's nothing that we can do to prevent anything of that. What can you do with your money? Obviously, Japanese bonds are not a good investment. With this interest rate, you probably need to stay away from that. Real estate. Well, if you live in Japan, it could be very interesting in terms of investment, building cash flow, as well as for tax purpose. And actually, we do own 2 cash flowing properties that someday we'll talk about in one of the upcoming videos. If you're not living in Japan and are looking to invest in REITs, well, it might be more difficult. REITs are always like, dislike, it's a hate and love relationship depending on what kind of investor you have. So I'm not going to recommend any REIT, but you can do your own research, and there's going to be some links in the description box below for helping you out. Now, if you want to invest in Japanese companies, especially international ones, we talked about the ones that are exporting and they can probably play with all the profit they're bringing back from US denominated or Euro denominated profit back to Japan and work on the FX difference. So to do so could be interesting, especially as the Japanese stock market has been trading the US stock markets for some time. So there are a couple of ETFs you can look at, and I'm writing them down below. We actually have invested in some of them that you can see here. They can be quite interesting to see, or again, do your own research, look at how much cost they have and go for the lower cost and the best reputation. There's also a link down below with all the ETFs, the Japanese centered or focused ETF, I should say, as well as the ETFs available on the Tokyo stock market. A lot of opportunity. I'm not talking about carry trade, FX carry trade. This is very complicated and that's risky as well. But if you know anything about that, that's something you can also look into investing in the future. And of course, cryptos, there are a lot of cryptos in Japan, crypto exchanges, I should say, but they are the same everywhere in the world. Maybe you can do some arbitrage if you are very advanced as a day trader in crypto as well, but that's not something I recommend. I think that ETFs, index funds, are the best way to go with the money that you don't need, because you're not playing with the money you would need immediately. Make sure you have your emergency fund well funded, but that's for another video. So Japan is obviously a force to reckon with as the 3rd largest economy in the world, as a big trade partner for so many countries, also a big donor of foreign aid, and at least on paper, a massive military power. A lot of good things going for it, but at the same time, massive debt, 200% to the GDP as a ratio, it's massive. The population is going down. The rates are small, which means that the Japanese yen is also going down. This is squeezing everybody. Energy costs are going down. There are problems with producing energy with all the power plants, nuclear power plants still shut. So a lot of issues there, and geopolitical issues as well, and natural disaster. So a lot of things can go really wrong for Japan. There is not still the political power to open the gates to immigration and try to reverse the flow onto the diminishing population, but we'll see. We need to remain optimistic, especially where I am located in Japan. Better remain very optimistic for all of us. There are opportunities to invest, there are opportunities to take care of your loved ones, so please have a look. Do not hesitate to think about it and do your own research. That's all for today. If you like this video, please give it a like. Do not hesitate to subscribe for more content to come soon. And if we missed something, if you want to see different types of content or have any idea, please leave a comment right below. Thank you again, and until next time.